Welcome to bLU Talks.
Excellent. It is so good to be here. Thank you very much. And for the speakers in the house, I know the last couple of years has been fascinating. How many of you have been speaking to audiences that look like this? Bunch of squares with maybe initials. And you're not sure, is anybody there? I actually gave a speech last week, and the way they had their parameters set up, as soon as I went live, they turned all of the people off. And it was just me and my PowerPoints alone in my office. I couldn't tell if anyone was there. So I just want to acknowledge you for being here. So please give yourself a huge round of applause for being here in person. I remember opening my eyes and having the immediate thought that I was laying and I needed to get back on my bicycle. And I tried to move and everything hurt. Places I couldn't imagine. My brain hurt, if that makes any sense. And I tried to breathe and it was like being stabbed by lightning. And I came to focus and my good buddy Lyle was sitting at the far end of the room in a chair and he got up and I soon came to realize I was in a hospital. But the last thing I remembered was I was on my bike at the Ultraman World Championships and I had just passed American Gary Wang, Australian Adam Fox, and Australian Peter Hudson. And we were chatting quickly as we were passing up this hill in the mountains. And he said, "How many half Ironmans have you done, mate?" And I was like, "I don't know, I've lost count." He's like, "We've only got one to go." And I thought, holy crap, he's right. Out of the 270 kilometers I have to cycle today, there's only 90 left. That's like almost free. And so I put my head down and I started to hammer the bike. And then I was in a hospital and I didn't know what had happened. And I asked Lyle what was going on. Where are we? And my first thought was, can I get back on my bike? Can I finish the race? But I realized pretty quickly that wasn't the deal. And the way he looked at me, I realized, actually, it seems like it's pretty good that I'm alive. And a lot of things seem to be connected to me. So Lyle told me the story again because I found out later it was about the 7th or 8th time he had told me what had happened. This was the first time my hard drive started to record. And I found out that while racing in the rain a little bit, I was going just under 70 kilometers an hour and my front wheel slid out on the algae of a bridge deck. And I cartwheeled down the bridge until I stopped. Now, I don't know if you can picture being in a convertible automobile with a chunk of styrofoam on your head, for safety, and you jump out. It doesn't go all that well. And some of the images that I saw were fairly profound. There's the crew gathered around. It's a little hard to see, but there's a pool of my own blood on the pavement. And this is my crew washing the blood out of my helmet. My helmet had twisted as I had cartwheeled, and I had gone from fit and world championships with my buddies to broken. I shattered my shoulder. It was broken in 4 pieces. I broke my arm in half. I busted 5 ribs. I broke my skull open. I busted up my knee. I split my eye open. I shaved the side of my face with road. And I had one of the worst brain injuries you can get. It was a bit of a rough go. I really want to acknowledge that Peter and Adam and Gary in their world championships stopped and kept me alive until the ambulance got there. 42 minutes later, in their world championships, they didn't move because all of a sudden that didn't matter. That was huge. They've become really good friends. And I always knew that racing in triathlon had risks. Like I thought I could get some road rash or I could maybe hurt my shoulder. I don't know. I thought I could, but it never occurred to me that I could die. And 3 days later, when my wife made it to Oahu, because we raced on Kona, and I was in Oahu in the brain trauma unit at the Queen's Medical Center. It took 3 days for my wife to get there with my son. And so to look at my 3.5-year-old and come face to face with that was tough. It was a long time, before I could look at that photo without crying. It still gets me a little, I'm sure you can tell. And I want to give huge credit to my wife, hauling around a 3.5-year-old and a broken husband with all of the gear that comes with triathlon. Like maybe I should do basket weaving as my next career because it's less to pack. Triathlon's a lot of stuff. But we made it, we got back to Canada, and 13 days after my crash, I went to my doctor because I said, boy, it really hurts to move my arm. And my shoulder was kind of hanging at a bad angle. And like they said it would heal, but I didn't think that was the case. Being a personal trainer, I know a little bit about anatomy and I knew something wasn't right. And so I went into the hospital in Red Deer and they rushed me into surgery. It was a 5-hour surgery to put a plate in my arm and a plate in my shoulder. And the big concern they had was my skull. And so I did a CAT scan and an MRI. Then they sent me for another MRI, a deeper scan, a longer MRI. And it turns out I had one of the worst brain injuries you can get. Hemorrhaging, bleeding to the frontal lobes, and a diffuse axonal scarring to the main brain tissue, which is where your white matter and your gray matter have been hit so hard they tear apart. And a point impact to the base. So it was kind of a thing. And I then went into hyperbaric oxygen therapy treatments where they put you in a chamber, they close the door and they compress it to 1 atmosphere, 33 feet below sea level equivalent. And you can breathe pure oxygen for an hour. It's very expensive, but it saved my brain because according to all of the medical textbooks, I was supposed to be in a vegetative state. And so I was really happy to not be there. Sure, I was slurring my words and I couldn't stay awake for more than an hour and a half. But considering the way it could have been, whiplash, all of the other things, it wasn't so bad. And so I started that big, long recovery. Now, I love my wife. We've been married 30 years this summer. And she gave me a card as I left the hospital. And it said, follow your dreams, except the one where you fly. That doesn't work out well. That's my wife. She's awesome. And she was a rock through the whole thing. As this whole process unfolded and I did the long journey back to getting back to racing. Because I will tell you, in that first waking moment in the hospital, I knew I would be back to racing. That was not a question. Because I'm a firm believer in taking a boat anchor and throwing it into the future with a rubber band on it and let it pull you to your goal. So my goal was clear. I needed to get well again so I could race again because I loved racing. And I needed to be a fully functional human for my son and my wife. Now recently, a friend of mine and I were talking and he said he was really upset about something. And I said, oh, what's wrong? He says, I just spent the last 48 hours playing the new PlayStation Spider-Man game and my completion score was only 15.7%. I was like, you're what? You finished the game. He goes, yeah, but my completion score sucked. I'm like, well, what does that mean? So in Spider-Man and some of these games, there's side things you can do. So not only do you go through the game and survive and beat the bad guy and make it to the end and you finish the game, but there's other stuff you can do in the game. There's side things you can do. And I got goosebumps. I thought, whoa, what if when you die, you check in somewhere? I don't know what your death beliefs are, but let's say, for example, there's a guy at a desk and he says, welcome to heaven. Your completion score is 15.7%. How many of you would be pretty ripped off? Like, oh my God, what did I miss? That hit me hard. Now in the game, there's all these different things you can do. There's different stuff you can achieve. But if I draw from the game, in the game, there's a map. And there's different, you can just go fight the bad guys and move on, but you can also look in this room or go down this alley. There's other things you can do. And how many places in the world do I still want to visit? How many of you love travel? How many places, they're still on your list? Like I've never been to the Great Wall of China. They have a marathon there. I feel like that would be really cool. There's lots of places I still want to go in the world. My map is not complete yet. And there are suits in the game. Now in Spider-Man, you start with a hoodie and sweats and he spray painted a spider on his chest. But later, if you get all the way, you get to the Tony Stark full gee-whiz nanotechnology suit. Is any Marvel geeks or just me? A few? Okay, good, I love it, nodding heads. So you get the full intuitive suit that does all the things, right? So for me, suits is jobs. How many careers can you have? I mean, my first jobs out of high school, I scraped off tiles from old restaurants. I dug ditches. I did whatever they would pay me money to do. I threw hay bales. I didn't care. And then I was in architecture for 13 years. Now that got me fat and sick. And then I got fit and healthy. And I was like, I don't want to wear this suit anymore. And so I took it off and I opened a gym. And I became a trainer. And then as I was a trainer, I realized I really wanted to teach people. And so I became a speaker and an author. And I've had lots of different suits on in my life. And I'm not sure what my next suit will be, but I'm pretty excited to find out. And drawing from the game, there's gadgets. Now, how many of you love gadgets? Right? I mean, there's a car that I still would love to own that I don't yet. Or even the car that I have, I wouldn't mind upgrading. But there's neat things. I mean, there's all kinds of lists of stuff I think will be fun to have. Things to make my life easier and things that are just frivolous and fun. That's kind of cool. There's skills I still want to achieve. Like I can't really juggle well, and I've started trying to figure out a Rubik's Cube, and that's kind of a neat thing, but I'm not there yet. So that's still a skill I want to develop. So there's skills I want on my completion score list. And there's missions. I've been really lucky to be a member of Rotary International for 20 years, and I've gone on missions where we bought 240 wheelchairs and delivered them to Mexico. And then we went there and handed them out to people. People with nothing. People with lives I can't even imagine. And we gave them a brand new wheelchair, something they would never achieve. I've done that 3 times now in 3 different countries. It's a great thing, and I want to do more missions. There's more stuff in the world. We're working on a project to get water filters and indoor cooking stoves. One of the #1 causes of death in third world countries is people running a campfire in their house because they don't have a stove. A stove is like $27 for the one that we designed. So there's missions I still want to do. And there's collections. I have a great collections of photos, but it needs to be sorted. Is anyone like this? Right? I'm 53 this year, and I still remember going on holidays, and you had maybe budgeted 4 rolls of 36 picture film. And so when you were done at the vacation, you had a maximum of like 150 pictures. Now I got a cell phone, I could take 3,000 this weekend. Will I ever look at them again? I'm not so sure. But those are collections, and I love to collect memories. I have over 100 race medals hanging in my house, and every medal tells a story and has a memory attached to it of amazing stuff. So I still have some stuff I'm collecting. And benchmarks, things I can do, things I can achieve. Now I'm an athlete, so my best 5K, my best 10K, my best marathon, my best Ironman. Like I feel like in life you come over a hump where your performance isn't getting better, it's gonna go the other way. I'm not willing to admit I'm over the hump yet. I probably am, but I'm not willing to admit it yet. So I still have some aspirations for benchmarks. And there's characters. Characters are one of my favorite things. I love meeting incredible people. I love interviewing people, meeting people. And one of the challenges I do face is with the brain injury, my ability to connect a name and a person and when I met them and how takes longer. And it's a little frustrating, but I figure if that's the only leftover I've got to deal with, I'm good. And then there's moves list. How many people still got some moves they want to get? Haven't quite got it down? Like my dancing moves could probably use a little upgrade, right? So I wouldn't mind learning a few more moves. I'm not done yet on my moves list. One of the things I did after this is I thought about my life in weeks. So I took an Excel spreadsheet and I built an image. Year 1, 52 weeks. Year 2, 52 weeks. And I built it all the way to 100. And the first phase I have as a kind of a dark gray, because you're not really autonomous. You don't have control over things like groceries or money or driving. So you're pretty, whatever your parents decide, that's what you do. And then you get that kind of 11 to 17 where you've got a little more autonomy, but you're still a little bit dependent. And then you've got that big zone between 18 and 60 where you do what you want to do. You're open. You get to be autonomous, you get to control, you get to influence, you get to do the things you want to do. That's that big butter zone. And then from 60 to 70, I've got it a little bit gray because I still plan on being amazing into my 70s, right? And I have to admit that some of the things I could do when I'm 20 and 30 probably won't look the same when I'm 60 or 70, okay? And then 70 to 80, it grays a little bit further. Still great, still amazing. I still think we can be fit and healthy, but it shifts. And then obviously as it gets later, it gets a little darker gray we can do less things, and then it gets a little darker still as our life reaches that point where the physical section isn't quite what it used to be. Can still be good though. I'm holding to that. Is anyone else still holding to that? Okay, good. So this is me right now. This is my grid. And you notice the open white space, it's not as big as it used to be. That puts on a little bit of a completion score hustle to me, where I kind of want to make sure I get to those things as best I can. And there's that little star where mine almost stopped. And all of the bottom half almost quit. So I'm really grateful for that. I'm very aware of how thankful I am. Now, this is my mom. She's 89 in April. And I just visited her 2 days ago. And she's almost done. Her completion is coming up really fast. Probably days. What's beautiful is I had the extreme pleasure of writing a chapter in a book with Corey Poirier in the bLU Talks book. And as I was writing that book, this was my topic, your completion score. And as I was writing it, I was visiting my mom in the fall of 2021. And it was heavy on my mind. And I talked to my mom. She was much more capable of conversation then. And I said, Mom, what's your favorite vacation? What's your favorite memory? What things did you and Dad do? What was it like when you grew up? I know you played basketball. What was your favorite game? And we talked for a good long hour and a half. And she, of her own volition, told me about how happy she was with the life she's had and how proud she was of me and my brother and our families, her grandchildren, and how she's had the most amazing life. And she's completely happy and she's complete. She's good. Her completion score in her eyes is 100. There's no question. And that's magic because my completion score is my completion score. It's not yours. I would guarantee that every single person in the audience watching this has a different completion score than everybody else. And that's not right or wrong. It's your terms. This is your life. You get to choose. And that has really sat with me. And I also realized there are some people that aren't sure what's on their list. They don't have one, maybe. They're just kind of winging it. And so people ask me, well, how do you make a completion score? Well, if you have no idea what you want, one thing you can do is start with a list of the things you don't want. When I was in the hospital, I did not want to remain broken. So my opposite was I want to be healed. Now, it took 3 years of physiotherapy every week to get my arm to work. It took 5 years before I could do what the doctors said would be impossible. I'm going to show you something impossible. You ready? Brace yourselves. It's impressive. Did you see that? I was told that would be impossible because my shoulder was shattered. But I got to tell you, it was being in physiotherapy, laying on the table with my physiotherapist with one hand on my rib cage, one hand on my elbow, pushing till he shook. And I could just breathe and wiggle my toes and hang on until he would just stop doing that after a minute or two. But eventually, we stretched my shoulder out so that I now have 100% range of motion, which they thought would never happen. But of course, for me, I wanted to be able to swim. So I need that arm to be able to do that. So I was committed to my completion list. So if you make a list of what you don't want, then your opposite could be your completion list. It's a place to start. And the other thing is you have to surround yourself in amazing people. Some of my favorite amazing people are here in this audience. And they look at you differently than you look at yourself. They see the Bengal tiger. For the longest time, I saw the kitten. I was reversed. I was a Bengal tiger and I saw a kitten, but my friends see the tiger. Now, maybe you're a wolf and you see a puppy. Dogs and cats, your choice. But it's important that way to surround yourself in amazing people. And I have to remind us all that yes means no. That's a big distinction in life. Everything you say yes to means no to something else. There are a lot of people in our lives like, hey, can I just bore you for 30 minutes? They want a favor. Sometimes favors are great, but sometimes it's a time suck and it's not going anywhere for you. Or if people want you to work for free, oh my gosh, I have worked for free way too many times, or not charge what I'm worth, okay? And here's another one that I find fascinating. How many of you have ever said yes to these little devils? Right? And this little screen here. Next episode will automatically play in 9 seconds. Has anyone been caught by this? Because what happens at the end of the episode, it's a cliffhanger. What's going to happen next? What? Okay, I'm just going to watch 5 minutes of the next episode just to see what happens. Has anyone done this? But they don't tell you, do they? They spend 10 minutes weaving the next story within the story, so you're hooked on that, and then they tell you what happened to the one you just finished. Well, by now you've watched the whole thing, and it starts over again, and now it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Has anybody played this game? By saying yes to that, I'm saying no to sleep, I'm saying no to everything else. Yes also means no, and I have a sticky note in my office that reminds me, by saying yes to this, what am I saying no to? If I get wrapped up in negative social media, I'm saying no to a good night's sleep. If I say yes to junk food, I'm saying no to being fit and healthy. So yes means no. I feel like that's very powerful when we've got our completion list on our mind. And people know this saying, you only live once. YOLO. Who's heard YOLO? You only live once. I want to tell you something. That's a load of crap. I 100% disagree with YOLO. You live every day. You only die once. And it's permanent. So make your life awesome. Every day. I have lived 1,000 amazing lifetimes since the day I nearly died. And I have been so grateful for every one of them. And I got to tell you, there was times when my 3-year-old had to put my socks on because Daddy couldn't do that. My wife had to learn to shave my face and my head. It was a new skill for her. She was quite scared she was going to cut me. But it's important. And the big thing, as I mentioned, my wife and my son, is to surround yourself with family. Now, ohana is the Hawaiian word for a family. And maybe you all remember, ohana means family. And family means nobody gets left behind or forgotten. Does anybody know Lilo and Stitch? Stitch is my boo. I don't know if I can show you this, but he's my guy, right? He's there. He's hanging on to the scar where they rebuilt my shoulder. He's kind of impossible to kill. He's really strange and people don't understand him, but he's super loyal to his friends. So I can relate. So I surround myself in good people. This was on the back of my race jersey in 2018, and it means a lot to me. These are the people that got me there. This is my buddies. These are my best friends. They helped me to that finish line. Of course, my wife, my son, and the rest of my family is part of that. This picture is just these guys. But we did get to the World Championships again in 2018, and we crossed the finish line, 25th overall, in the hardest race course they had ever designed. The bike course took us halfway up the Everest equivalent. 14,000 feet of climbing in 30-degree heat. It was a thing. And I want to leave you with something, which is your past doesn't need you anymore. Your future does. So please live your completion score so that when you get to where my mom is, you're at 100% and you're good. Thank you very much for your time. Hoo-ah!